So what's going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 best invasion builds in New World. So for each and every single build I will explain what attributes and perks you want to have, then what gems and specific gear you want to use to get out your stats as much damage as possible. Then as well I will show you the best gameplay of me using different weapons so you would know which abilities you want to use first on your enemies. And on top of all this, I will even tell you the best potions and dedicated perks that will increase your resistance and damage against the corrupted mobs, which you will be fighting in the invasions and much more. So if all this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then, moving over to the first build, which is the one and only Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet, and these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your intelligence to 150 or even 200 and then start building your constitution. And at the end game always have this 3:1 ratio, so have intelligence 3 times more than constitution, and around level 60 you should have 300 intelligence and 100 constitution. And lastly, for your gear you want to go with the medium category, and the best gear setup is to have medium helmet, heavy chest piece, light gloves, heavy pants and light boots. And this will give you 22.9 kg weight, which is exactly just below the heavy weight category. And yes, the Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet are getting nerfed by like 5%, but these weapons are still viable and this build is still the number 1 for the highest damage in the entire game. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the Fire Staff, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock both these 2 perks and then the first ability called Fireball, and then get these 3 perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Pillar of Fire and then the next perk to that as well. And now let's take a closer look at the other side and unlock all these 3 perks. Then lastly get the last third ability called the Burnout and then get these 2 perks. And now from this point you'll feel free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock all these 3 perks and then the first ability called the Ice Storm, and then get these 3 perks. Then from here, now let's move over to the other side and unlock this 1 perk, and then the second ability called the Ice Shower, and then unlock the next perk to him as well. And lastly get the last third ability with the next perk. And now from this point you'll feel free to use your points in whatever order you like. Okay, so now we have come to the gameplay, where I will show you the best way to play this build. So first of all we have the Fire Staff, and the Q ability, aka the Burnout, is a big dash spell, which you can use for mobility. Or if you hit enemies while dashing, they will take extra burn damage. Then the R ability is called the Pillar of Fire. I usually only use it on groups of mobs or players, but never in a 1v1, because it will deal decent damage but you have to stand still for a second while casting the spell. And by doing that you become an easy target to hit. So basically only use the spell against multiple targets. There is of course a way to cancel the animation by using the spell and right away dodging it, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I prefer to save it only for wars or invasions. And then lastly we have the F ability called the Fireball, which is very powerful damage spell. And it is an AoE spell, so you don't have to hit directly an enemy. You can just aim it at the ground where the target is standing on and it will damage him as well. So now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet, and your Q spell is called the Ice Storm, which all enemies standing in it will get damaged and slowed. And the more enemies you hit, the higher damage you will get. Then your R ability is called the Ice Shower, which when using will create an ice wall, and if mobs go through it, it will stun them. And lastly, our last third ability is basically like an ice block, which by using you put yourself in a block where you cannot take any damage. And of course you can go out of that ice block by pressing the same F key, or instead press the left mouse button and make it explode and do even more damage to the enemies. So as far as your ability combinations go for the Ice Gauntlet when farming mobs or even players, the best spell combination to do is place the Ice Storm, aka the Q ability, on the ground and then go Ice Block by pressing the F ability. And players or mobs standing in the storm will be taking a lot of damage every second, and you will be fully protected in the Ice Block. Then of course place the Ice Shower, aka the R ability, whenever you want to stun an enemy or run away from him, and this will create a wall which the enemy cannot go through. And the best way to use them is in choke points like in entrances of the fort and much more. And then as far as your Fire Staff abilities go, use the Fireball and Pillar of Fire on grouped up enemies, and to run away from enemies or even do more AoE damage, use the Burnout ability and dash through them. And just a simple reminder to only use normal auto attacks and don't bother with heavy attacks. I've personally tested using light attacks versus heavy attacks, and to be honest, there isn't much of a difference. Besides this one perk that gives us 10% cooldown reduction, but especially in invasions, using the light attacks it's so much easier. You can just basically spam them 24/7 and you don't have to spend that extra 1 second while you're holding the mouse button, so the attack would go from light to heavy. And of course, this is your own personal preference. But if you want to get that 2 or 3% even more damage per second, then I believe that using light attacks is the way to go. But of course, if you use this method, you have to use mana potions as well. And with all this said, now let's go over my final conclusions for this build. This Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet weapon combination right now is by far the best DPS / highest damage build that you could have in New World, and you can use it for PvP and PvE as well. And then the next step I only use for 50v50 wars and invasions because it requires for you to spend gold. But if you really want to get maxed out of your damage, then for food use the +40 intelligence food. But if you can't afford it, then buy +30 or +20 intelligence food. And then as well, don't forget to use honing stones. I personally prefer to use tier 4 honing stones as they are at a decent price, and when using them you have to have one of your weapons in your hand and not on your back, or it will not work. And then use it as any other consumable, and this will give you from 5 to 7% more damage depending on which tier you bought. And then on top of all this, to go from 98% damage possibility to even more 100 or even more, on your Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet you want to have one or two of these perks, which is called the Keen and it gives 10% crit chance. Then the second perk is called the Enchanted and it gives 9% damage to your light or heavy attacks. And lastly we have the third ability called the Vicious, and it increases plus 10% critical damage. So if your weapon has one of these perks or even two, then you significantly increase your DPS. And lastly, on your gear you want to have the Refreshing Pillar of Fire, which reduces its ability cooldown by 12% per enemy hit. And then the second ability is called the Empowering Fireball, which makes your Fireball ability deal 28% more damage. As a new player, I would only recommend to just copy the build weapon masteries and the equipment, and when you get to level 60 and you really want to max out your damage, then start building your equipment with the best perks, start using honing stones and everything else I have said in this video. And then last but definitely not least, for the Ice Gauntlet you want to use the Malachite gem. Then for your Fire Staff get the Diamond gem, and then for your gear, amulets and everything else use the Onyx gems, and that's about it. So if you're looking for the best and highest damage build for invasions, then these are the weapons for you, so have fun. So then moving over to the second build, which is the best healer / paladin tank build. And for the weapons you want to use the live staff and sword with shield. And these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0 you want to get your focus to 150 and then start building your constitution. And around level 60 you should have 250 focus and 150 constitution. And last but definitely not least, for your gear you want to go with full heavy armor and you have to use a shield as well. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the live staff, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock this perk and then the first ability called the Sacred Ground, and then afterwards unlock all these 5 perks. Then now let's go over to the other side and unlock this one perk and then the second ability called the Beacon, and then get these 2 perks. Then lastly unlock the last third ability called the Light's Embrace and then get these 2 perks. And now from this moment you're full free to spend your points in whatever order you like. So then for our second weapon we have the sword, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, right off from the start you want to unlock both these 2 perks and then get the first ability called the Leaping Strike and then get these 2 perks. Then from here, now let's move over to the other side and unlock the second ability called the Shield Rush and then get these 4 perks. And then lastly unlock the last third ability called the Defiant Stance and then get these 2 perks. And now from this point you're full free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay, where I will show you the best way to play this build. So then for the life staff, your Q ability is called the Sacred Ground, which you have to point and select the area you want to place it in, and then cast it for a split second. Then the R ability is called the Light's Embrace, and it basically works the same way, just for a single target. And you can heal yourself by holding the control button and activating the spell. And lastly, we have the F ability called the Beacon, which you can just aim and it places a huge circle on the ground. And if you target a player, you can attach the spell to him specifically. So instead of the circle being on the ground, it will be attached to a player, making the spell very useful in invasions. So then for our second weapon we have the sword, and the first Q spell is called the Leaping Strike, which basically is a damage ability that makes you leap for 6 meters to the enemy. Then the second ability is called the Shield Rush, and the spell makes your character run very fast for 5 meters. And if you hit the target while running, he will get knocked back. And then our third ability is called the Defiant Stance, which you can just activate, and for the next 8 seconds your resistance is increased. So then as for the actual way to play this build, it doesn't matter if you are by yourself in open world or in invasions, your main mission is to stay alive and be unkillable, while still annoying enemies and helping out your teammates with healing. So the way you want to play it is first of all use the sword and activate the Leaping Strike or the Shield Rush abilities whenever you want to attack the enemy. And always save your Defiant Stance ability on when the mobs are about to deal a lot of damage, or if you want to increase your threat level. And then as far as your healer spell combinations go, it is your own personal preference. But if you can, and in the best case scenario, always use Beacon ability first and then the Light's Embrace ability, and this will increase your healing. And then if your teammates are grouped up and low health, use the Sacred Ground. And then as the Light's Embrace ability has super low cooldowns, you can basically spam it every 2 to 3 seconds. So in my final conclusions for this build, this Life Staff and Sword with Shield weapon combination is not meant to deal a lot of damage, but instead it's built to survive a lot of bosses or mobs by yourself and still have the option to help out your teammates and deal decent amount of damage. And right now the healing staff in general and heavy armor is broken, and it has way too much resistance and healing output capability. So as long as the current meta doesn't change, this is by far the best unkillable tank slash healer build for every single activity in the game. And then lastly, for your life staff you want to use the Diamond Gem, then for your sword use the Amber Gem, and lastly for all of your gear, amulets, rings and everything else use the Onyx Gems. And don't forget to, no matter which build you're using, every single player in Invasions should be using the attribute food for their class, so for more constitution, more intelligence and etc. And most importantly, you have to use the corrupted coatings as well, which will give you more damage specifically for invasion mobs, and you can use them the same way like any other honing stone or consumable, and that's it. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for the best build to tank the invasions for your team, then this is the build for you, so enjoy! So then, moving over to the last and final build, which is the Great Axe and Warhammer, and these are the attributes you want to have. And just so you would know, this is the best tank slash melee DPS build for invasions, and it is really good for PvP and even PvE. So then, no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your strength to 100 or even 150, and then start building your constitution. And around level 60, you should have 200 strength and 100 constitution. And lastly, for your gear, you want to go again with full heavy armor, but this time the shield is optional. To make your character look better, you can equip it, but if you don't care, then just don't use any shields. So then for our first weapon, we have the Great Axe, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock the first ability called the Reap, and then get these 2 perks. Then afterwards, unlock the second ability called the Charge, and then get these 2 perks. Then from this point, now let's move over to the other side and unlock all these 3 perks. Then lastly, unlock the last third ability called the Gravity Well, and then get these 3 perks. And now from this point, you'll feel free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Warhammer. And these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock the first ability called the Clear Out, and then get these 2 perks. Then afterwards, unlock the second ability called the Shockwave, and then get these 2 perks. And lastly, unlock the last third ability called the Path of Destiny, and then get these 2 perks. And now from this point, let's take a closer look at the left side and unlock all these 3 perks, and that's it. Now again, from this moment, you can spend your points in whatever order you want. So then, let's move over to the gameplay, where I will show you the best way to play this tank build and how to get out your abilities the best possible results. So first things first, for your Great Axe Q ability, we have the Gravity Well, which you can just aim and shoot, and if you hit the target in that electric storm, he will take damage and get stunned. Then the second ability is called the Reap, which basically extends your axe for 5 meters, and if an enemy is casting the spell, you can pull him back and interrupt his attack. And lastly, we have the F ability called the Charge, and this is another dash ability which will deal damage and give you more mobility. And now let's go straight into the Warhammer, and the first Q spell is called the Clear Out, and it is a wide swing that knocks back all targets in 4-meter range. Then the R ability is called the Shockwave, and when using the spell, it gives us the ability to slam down the hammer and create a small earthquake. and all enemies standing in it will get stunned for 2 seconds. And lastly, we have the F ability called the Path of Destiny, which creates a huge electric wave, and all enemies standing in this path will take a bunch of damage. So the way you want to attack the corrupted is by using your Great Axe and then activate the Gravity Well, and then follow that up with the Charge ability. Then switch to the Warhammer and either way use your Shockwave or Path of Destiny, or save it for later, and keep on using auto attacks plus the block, so you do 1 or 2 heavy attacks and then block in between. So like you can see, with this build there is no one best way to use your spells. The most important thing is to know what each ability does, and with time and practice you will know what to do in each situation. And then, as there are a lot of mobs with muskets, remember to watch out from them, and as a tank, don't stand still for too long. Okay, and now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This Great Axe and Warhammer weapon combination right now is super strong. So then, like in the first build, you want to use Honing Stones for extra damage, but this time instead of using Intelligence food you want to use plus 40 Constitution food. Then the best high tier gear is the Void Armor with the Resilient perk, which will give you 4.8% less crit damage when enemies hit you with a critical hit. And for your weapons, in the best case scenario you again want to have either way more crit chance, crit damage or extra damage to light or heavy attacks, which we already looked into the previous build. So then lastly, for your Warhammer and Great Axe, if you want to do more damage, use the Opal Gem, and for PvE / if you want to be primarily a tank, then use the Carnelian Gem. And then for all of your gear, get the Enix gems. So if you were looking to do massive amounts of damage and still be a tank as a melee player, then this is the build for you, so enjoy. And that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good builds for New World invasions that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you wouldn't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I'll catch you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.